My mother looked me dead in the eye and said, "We spent 90% of your savings to put a down payment on your sister's house." Chloe didn't even blink. She just laughed, flicked her hair, and said, "Relax, Ethan. You didn't need that money anyway." The room went quiet, not because they felt guilty, but because they were waiting for me to thank them. I stood there, hands still dusty from a 12-hour shift, heartbeat thudding in my ears, staring at the people I'd spent 6 years supporting. None of them noticed the way my jaw tightened, or how my breathing steadied. They had no idea what I was about to do next. But what they didn't know was, before I go on, tell me where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever been blindsided by your own family. Because what happened next didn't just expose the truth about mine, it changed the entire course of our lives. My name is Ethan Miller. I'm 29 years old. And for most of my life, I thought loving your family meant carrying their weight without ever letting them see you strain. I learned that lesson early. Back when I was 16, slinging plates at a rundown diner off Highway 17, while the neon sign outside buzzed like an angry hornet. Grease hung in the air, sticking to my clothes, my hair, my skin. Every night, I'd come home smelling like burnt coffee and fried onions. One night, I placed my tip jar on the kitchen counter, crumpled bills I'd pulled from pockets of truckers and exhausted nurses. Mom didn't even look up from the TV. She just slid the jar toward herself with 2 fingers, saying she needed a few things for the house. I watched her pull out enough to cover a full nail appointment. Not groceries. Dad clapped my shoulder, told me I was doing the right thing for the family. I swallowed it, but it carved deeper than I realized. Years later, I'd still remember the sharp smell of acetone on Mom's hands the next morning. By 18, I was working full-time at a warehouse. The cold concrete floors, the echo of forklift horns, the metal screech of pallets, dragging it became the soundtrack of my early adulthood. I'd get home at 2 in the morning, my shirt soaked through with sweat, fingers raw from cardboard cuts, bones aching in places I didn't know could ache. Mom would be asleep, Dad snoring in the recliner, Chloe on the couch, scrolling her phone, not even glancing up when I came in. "You're loud," she would mutter without looking away from her screen, as if I'd chosen to slam boxes all night for fun. But I kept going, kept working, kept climbing. I got my first promotion at 22, supervisor. I remember how proud I was walking through the door that night, still in my steel-toed boots, clutching the letter from HR like it was a golden ticket. But Mom didn't ask what the raise was. Dad didn't ask how I felt. Chloe just said, "So you're still in a warehouse, right? It's not exactly a career." I told myself they didn't mean it. They were tired, distracted. Whatever excuse softened the wound enough for me to keep moving. Then came the day the landlord told us the old lease wouldn't renew unless someone with better income signed the new one. Dad's hours were dropping. Mom's retail job barely covered her gas. My income, quiet, steady, reliable, was the only one that qualified. I signed the lease. Dad told the whole extended family it was his credit score that saved the day. He laughed when he said it. Everyone laughed with him. I sat next to the fridge drinking lukewarm tap water, wondering how my name on a legal document had somehow turned into his bragging rights. And then Chloe graduated. A communications degree. Modest GPA. But you'd think she was crowned royalty the way they treated her. She came home with a ring light, 3 outfits she called content staples, and an announcement that she needed to crash here until her brand took off. Mom cleared space for her in the living room. Dad bragged that she was the future of the family. I was the only one still paying the rent. For a while, I tried to rationalize it. We were a team, a family. Parents sacrifice first, then kids do it later. That's how it works, right? But I wasn't naive. I saw the patterns. I saw who they praised, who they ignored. I saw how every milestone I hit a bigger role, a better salary. A new responsibility was brushed off because it didn't fit the narrative they'd written about me. To them, I was dependable because I didn't complain, useful because I stayed quiet, invisible because I kept showing up no matter how tired I was. I didn't know it then, but every ignored celebration, every dismissed achievement, every moment I swallowed my pride, they were all small fractures in something that would eventually shatter. I didn't recognize how fast the years blurred until I looked up one day and realized I had spent nearly half a decade living a double life. At home, I was the tired warehouse guy who helped out when he could. At work, I was the man overseeing 15 warehouses across 4 states, walking the floor in pressed shirts while supervisors scrambled to give me updates. I'd get emails addressed, Director Miller. But at home, Chloe would shout down the hall asking if I could run to Target and grab her some lashes. The contrast was insane, but it was my reality. Some nights, after back-to-back meetings and 12-hour warehouse tours, I'd stop in the driveway before going inside. I'd sit there in my truck, forehead against the steering wheel, trying to switch gears from being the one people respected to the one people used. I could see the glow of the TV through the living room curtains, hear Chloe's laughter, the clatter of dishes, Dad's voice bragging loudly about something he didn't do. Inside, they barely looked at me. Pick up milk, Mom would ask without greeting. You got 20 for gas, Dad would ask as he walked past me, already holding out his hand. Chloe wouldn't even pause her scrolling. Close the door quietly. I'm filming tomorrow. It was bizarre how normal it had all become. But there were moments sharp, unforgettable moments when the illusion cracked. One afternoon, I came home early. Warehouse inspection wrapped quicker than expected. I walked in and heard Mom on speakerphone, talking to her sister. She didn't hear me. He makes decent money now, Mom whispered. Probably way more than he admits. If he gets serious with someone, we need to ask for help before that girl takes control. You know how wives get. I froze in the hallway, hand still on the doorknob. That boy owes us, she continued. After everything we've done. For a second, I wondered if I'd stepped into someone else's life. I backed out quietly and sat in my car for half an hour, listening to my pulse thump against my skull. I didn't say anything. Not then. I just tucked it away, another tally mark. Holidays were always the worst. Thanksgiving felt like a performance where the script was always the same. Mom fussed over Chloe's outfit. Dad praised her degree. Relatives asked about her brand growth, like she was already a celebrity. Meanwhile, I carved the turkey while Dad told everyone I just worked in some warehouse. Not a director. Not a leader. Not someone who kept a roof over all their heads. Just Ethan, the safe, dependable one. The background character in my own home. Christmas wasn't much better. Chloe always got the expensive gifts, skincare sets, clothes, specialty cameras. I got socks or a mug with some joke about being tired. One year, Aunt Nancy gave Chloe a $200 gift card and handed me a half-eaten fruitcake she claimed she forgot she had. I laughed it off in front of them. Later, alone in my room, I stared at the crumbling loaf and felt something inside me shift. Microscopic, but permanent. The worst part, I loved them. I genuinely believed things would change. That loyalty would be enough. That if I kept proving myself, they'd eventually see me, not just what I provided. But they never did. Not when I paid the electric bill after it nearly shut off. Not when I fixed Dad's truck at 2 in the morning so he wouldn't miss work. Not when I bailed Chloe out of late rent at her crappy college apartment. Not even when I covered Mom's medical copay after she blamed me for not keeping track of her appointments. Every good thing I did faded instantly into expectation, like I was built for service. Not affection. Then came the night that changed everything. My 29th birthday. I dragged myself home after a brutal double shift. My shoulders were burning, shirt stained with dust and engine oil, throat dry from hours on the warehouse floor. All I wanted was a shower and maybe cheap takeout in bed. I opened the door and heard music loud. Thumping. Laughter. The smell of catered pasta and garlic bread drifted down the hallway. Decorations hung across the living room. Balloons bobbing near the ceiling. For a split second, my heart lifted. They remembered. Then I saw the sign. Congratulations, Chloe. I stood there, invisible, listening to them celebrate her new part-time job at Target like she'd won a Pulitzer. I told you he'd come late. Chloe giggled. Inventory boy is always tired. Someone asked who I was. She waved a hand. Just my brother. Just. I checked the kitchen counter. Receipts. Hundreds of dollars. All on my card. A cake from the fancy bakery downtown, the same one I could never justify buying from for myself. Nobody remembered my birthday. Not a single person. The noise of the party blurred. The lights felt too bright. My chest squeezed in a way I can't describe. It was the moment something inside me finally, fully broke. That was the night I decided to test them. I didn't know it then. But the test would expose everything. The morning after that birthday disaster. The house was eerily calm, like a crime scene after everyone's fled. The half-deflated balloons hung in the hallway. The smell of leftover pasta still clung to the air. Chloe's cake sat on the counter. A perfect slice missing. My birthday had vanished into the carpet along with the spilled wine stains. Nobody said a word about last night. Nobody apologized. Nobody even acknowledged my existence. And that silence, it told me everything I needed to know. I woke up before dawn, drove to my usual coffee spot, and sat in the empty parking lot with my engine off, watching the sky shift from purple to gray. I called Jason Kim. I need something drafted. I said, what kind of something? A loan agreement? Bulletproof. Something people can sign without reading and still lose in court. He paused. Ethan, what exactly are you planning? Clarity. I said. For them. And for me. I could hear his sigh through the phone. Send me the details. I'll handle it. That was the beginning. But the escalation, that happened faster than even I expected. When I got home, Chloe was already in the living room, filming some makeup haul video in her robe. She didn't look up, closed the door quietly. You're messing up the audio. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted metal. 2 days later, I placed a new checking account card on the dining table, $12,000 in it. A test. A mirror held up to their character. This is all I have saved. I told them. Use it carefully. Household expenses only. Nothing extra. Mom's eyes lit up. Dad nodded solemnly like he was accepting the burden of responsibility. Chloe snatched the card like it was a backstage VIP pass. For the entire first month, they played their roles well. Groceries, utilities, gas, rent. Part of me dared to hope just a little that maybe, just maybe, I'd been wrong. That they'd prove they were more than leeches with my last name. That hope didn't even survive the second month. It started small. A Nordstrom charge. $450. I walked into the house that evening and saw Chloe twirling in designer heels. Job interview, she said. Spinning. Can't show up looking basic. What job? I asked. She shrugged. Didn't happen. Manager flaked. Dad asked if I could spot him 20 at the same moment. By week 7, the account had paid for a new tablet at Best Buy, a spa package for Mom, and dinners at restaurants I'd never once been invited to. I didn't say a thing, not because I was weak, but because I wanted to see just how far entitlement could go before gravity ripped it down. The card became their oxygen. Whenever I came home, There was another bag on the counter, another receipt in the trash, another smirk from Chloe, like she was daring me to say the obvious. Month 3 was when the mask fully dropped. I came home early from a warehouse audit. My boots were still dusty when I pushed open the door to my room and saw Chloe jump to her feet. "What are you doing?" I asked. She shoved something into her pocket. "Looking for a charger." "That's my desk." She rolled her eyes. "You always think everything's about you." Later, I checked. My old pay stubs had been moved, the ones from when I made barely 32 grand a year. She had been trying to calculate my worth. She didn't find the real numbers. I'd moved all my actual financial documents into a safe deposit box months earlier. But the intent, that stayed with me. Mom's spending grew bolder. She told me she needed gas money, then walked in with Whole Foods bags and fresh highlights. Dad claimed overtime. But I drive by the shop and see his car parked at home, untouched. Every lie added weight to the silence inside me. But the real escalation came late one night when I caught their voices leaking down the hallway. "I think we should use the rest for the down payment," Mom whispered. "What if he notices?" Dad murmured. "He gave us the card." Chloe snapped. "And once we're in the new place, he won't even be living with us anymore. He's almost 30. It's embarrassing. He can still help with the mortgage." Mom added, "It's for the family." I recorded every word. I stood there in the dark hallway, my phone glowing cold in my hand, listening to them plan a future where I wasn't part of the home they expected me to pay for. The next day, the pieces clicked. All of them. When I drove up one Saturday morning and saw them piling into the car dressed too nicely for brunch, I followed. They didn't see me. Tyler did. He texted me a picture of them with a realtor outside a rundown 3-bedroom in Maville. One of the worst areas in the entire county. They're planning to buy. He wrote, "With your money?" The test had become prophecy, and they were sprinting straight off the cliff. I parked half a block away that morning, watching them from my truck as they toured the peeling 3-bedroom with barred windows and a sagging porch. The realtor kept gesturing enthusiastically. But even from the street, I could see the roofline bowing like a spine about to snap. Chloe spun around in the dead patchy yard, holding her phone up for selfies. Mom pointed at the smallest room, mouthing the word office. Dad pretended to measure imaginary walls with his hands. And there I sat, engine off, letting the scene burn itself into me. This wasn't desperation. It wasn't survival. It was entitlement, pure and swollen, like something festering under the skin. That night, I pulled up the bank app. Balance $4,892. 2 days later, a new charge appeared. A cash withdrawal, $920. They hadn't just drained the account. They'd taken the last bit to fill the down payment gap. The arrogance stunned me. Not because they were capable of it, I'd known for years what they were capable of, but because they were bold enough to do it while still pretending I owed them something. I didn't confront them. Not yet. I needed them to believe the illusion a little longer. A week later, Chloe texted me while I was mid-inspection at our Glendale site. "Family meeting at 4. News." I read the text twice, then tucked my phone away and kept walking the warehouse floor. Steel racks towered above me, forklifts weaving in and out. One of my supervisors jogged up beside me, asking for approval on a schedule change. I gave it, calmly, professionally, the way I always did. No one around me knew that far away. In a shabby rental house I'd paid for over half a decade, a storm was waiting. I arrived home at 4:17. On purpose. They were in the living room. Mortgage papers spread across the coffee table, like trophies. The afternoon sun cut a hard line across the room, illuminating their excitement. Mom's smile was wide. Dad kept shuffling the papers like he was waiting for applause. Chloe flicked her hair and locked her phone, probably ready to post something inspirational about new beginnings. We bought a house, she announced, voice dripping with self-satisfaction. Mom jumped in. Well, we put down the payment. It's a wonderful place. Chloe finally gets the space she deserves. Dad nodded. 3 bedrooms. Plenty of room for all of us. I kept my voice steady. All of us. Mom waved a hand dismissively. Well, you're almost 30. Ethan, it's time you get your own place anyway. Right. Chloe added. It's kind of weird you still live at home. The irony punched me so hard I almost laughed. Home. The lease was in my name. The bills were in my name. The roof over their heads existed because of me. And they were telling me to be grateful they were kicking me out. I let the silence stretch. Mom cleared her throat. We'll need your help with the mortgage. Of course. It's for the family. Dad leaned forward. Just $13.50 a month. Plus maybe $500 for utilities and groceries. You know, just to help us get settled. So, I said slowly, you want me to find my own apartment? While paying almost $2,000 a month for a house I can't live in? Mom's smile tightened. It's temporary. For the family. Chloe echoed. Like reading from a script. I studied them. Their eager faces. Their glowing excitement. Their absolute certainty that I would say yes. And in that moment, the entire 5-month test clicked into place. They had emptied the account. Lied about expenses. Used the card for luxuries. Planned a future without me. Expected me to fund it anyway. It was the purest form of truth I could have asked for. I'll help, I said softly. Mom exhaled in relief. Dad sagged back against the couch. Chloe smirked. Triumphant. I wasn't done. But before we move forward, I continued. There's something I need you all to see. I stood up, walked down the hall, closed my bedroom door behind me, and let out one slow breath. My hands were steady as I pulled the folder from my desk drawer, the same folder with the crisp 8-page document Jason had drafted. When I walked back into the living room, they were still smiling. That made it easier. I set the papers down in front of them. Mom blinked. What's this, a clarification? I said. About the last 5 months. Chloe flipped the first page. Loan agreement and promissory note. What is, you remember the account I gave you access to? I cut in. The $12,000 you called my life savings. Dad frowned. You said it was. I said it was everything I managed to save. You assumed it was a gift. I tapped the top of the page. That, I said quietly, is the contract you all signed without reading. The room went very, very still. It was the kind of silence that feels like a held breath before the world tilts. And the world was about to tilt hard. Dad stared at the first page, like the letters were rearranging themselves. Mom's smile drained off her face. Slow and brittle, like paint cracking in the sun. Chloe's jaw hung slightly open, eyes flicking from the page to me, then back again, as if waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. Read the title, I said. My voice was low, steady, controlled in a way that made the air feel colder. Dad cleared his throat. Loan, agreement, and promissory note. Mom snapped her gaze toward me. This isn't funny. Ethan, it's not a joke. Chloe slapped the papers shut. We didn't sign this. I leaned forward, tapped page 3. Your signature. Right under the paragraph explaining the borrowed amount and the repayment obligation. She hesitated. Just a flicker. But it was enough. Mom grabbed the papers and flipped through them so fast the pages made a dry, frantic sound. This can't be real. You said it was for bank access. You told us. I told you it was paperwork required to access the account. I let that hang. You didn't ask what else was in it. Dad's face flushed. You tricked us. No. I corrected. I gave you 8 pages of clear, legally binding terms. You chose not to read them. Chloe scoffed loudly. No real court is going to enforce this. Your family. I pulled out my phone, opened an email, turned the screen toward them. Jason Kim, corporate attorney. He drafted it. He reviewed it twice. Every clause. Every word. It's airtight. Mom's lips started trembling. Why would you do this to us? To see who you really were when you thought you had my last dollar. The silence after that wasn't quiet. It throbbed. Heavy. Thick. Ugly. Dad pointed a shaking finger at me. We're your parents. You owe us, I owe you nothing. My voice didn't rise. It sharpened. Not after the way you've talked about me behind closed doors. Not after using my money for spa trips and designer crap. Not after calling me weird for living in a house I paid for. Not after kicking me out of a home where the lease is in my name. Mom flinched like I'd slapped her. Dad looked down at the documents again. His hand trembled near the signature. We can't repay this. You already spent it. I said. That's not my problem. Chloe leaned forward, voice rising. Are you seriously going to sue your own family? Over $12,000. 12,000. I echoed. Plus 7% interest. Monthly payments. And additional fees if you default. Everything you agreed to with your signature. Her breath hitched. You're insane. She hissed. Am I? I tilted my head. Or did you sign something you didn't bother to read because you assumed I was too stupid? Too soft. Too pathetic to ever stand up to you. Mom covered her mouth with her hand. Her eyes glistened. Dad pushed the papers away. Hard. We're not doing this. You already did. The room felt smaller now. Like the walls had inched closer. The sunlight had shifted, leaving half the living room in shadow. Dust floated lazily in the air, catching the last amber glow from the window. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a small recorder, pressed play. Their voices filled the room instantly. Mom's whisper, use the rest for the down payment. Dad's nervous reply, what if he notices Chloe's laugh? He won't. And he needs to move out. He's almost 30. Embarrassing. The three of them froze. I recorded that. I said quietly, in case any of you tried to claim the money was used responsibly, or that you didn't intend to cut me out while expecting me to pay for your new life. Mom sank onto the couch, tears finally spilling. Dad's voice cracked. Please. Son. Don't do this. Chloe looked between us. Jaw tight. Breath uneven. This is revenge. You're pathetic. No. I said. This is accountability. I reached for the contract. Slipped it back into my folder. The sound of the paper sliding across the table seemed to echo in the room. Your first payment is due in 30 days. Mom sobbed into her hands. Dad looked like the floor had vanished under him. Chloe stared at me with pure hatred. But beneath it, buried deep, was fear. I stood up slowly, my boots pressed against the worn living room carpet, grounding me in a way I hadn't felt in years. I supported this family for 6 years. I said, every bill, every emergency, every indulgence you pretended was a necessity, and all you saw was a wallet that wouldn't fight back. I stepped toward the doorway. That man is gone. Mom reached out weakly. Ethan. Wait. But I kept walking. Halfway down the hall, I stopped, turned slightly, met their eyes one last time. You should have read what you signed. Then I walked out, leaving their world and the illusion of our family crumbling behind me. I didn't go home for 2 days. I stayed in a hotel near the interstate. One of those quiet, dim places with humming air conditioners and carpet that smelled faintly like old coffee. For the first time in years, nobody texted me asking for money. Nobody demanded errands. Nobody expected anything from me at all. The silence felt unfamiliar. Then it felt peaceful. Then it felt necessary. On the third morning, I met Jason at his office. He spread the contract across his conference table, smoothing each page with the careful precision of someone who'd seen too many families implode over far less. They'll fight it, he warned. I know. They'll lie. They already have. He studied me for a long second. Are you sure you want to take this all the way? I thought of Chloe laughing as she told the realtor she wanted the biggest bedroom. Of Mom saying I should move out after using my money to pay for a house I wasn't welcome in. Of Dad insisting I owed them because they birthed me, raised me, shaped me. And I thought of myself, standing in that living room, steady for the first time in my life. Yes, I said. I'm sure. Jason sighed softly. Then let's begin. He slid over a printed timeline, court filings, repayment enforcement, wage garnishment options, lien possibilities, cold, clinical words, necessary ones. I didn't smile. I didn't feel triumphant. What I felt was precise. Because revenge wasn't the goal. Not really. Clarity was. They had shown me exactly who they were. Now the world would see it too. That afternoon, I drove back to the house not to move back in, but to gather the last of my things. The driveway was empty. The blinds were drawn. A foreclosure notice flapped lightly against the front window, held by a strip of blue tape. A single, quiet confirmation of everything I already knew. I stood there for a moment, hands in my pockets, breathing in the cold air. The wind tugged at the notice, making it snap against the glass like a warning. They thought they had destroyed me, but all they did was hand me the one weapon I needed. Truth. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, hit subscribe, because stories like mine don't end where the shouting stops, or where the signatures dry on a piece of paper. They end when you finally realize you deserve peace and you choose it, even if it means walking alone for a while. And trust me, this wasn't the end. Not for them. Not for me. Not for what came after. So stay here. Follow the channel. Because the next time someone thinks they can use you without consequences, you'll know exactly what to do.